you have to like enjoy the investigation, the journey, the quest as much as you enjoy the potential for success at the end of the road.
Create for No Reason is your weekly dose of inspiration to create what you believe should exist in the world. It's where passion meets craft, and we explore the joy of the creative process and building a meaningful body of work. Andrew, thank you
Yeah.
so much for being here again.
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me back. It's always fun to chat. We always have a good time.
So right before I hit record, I was like, "Oh man, I should have started recording before because you were saying such beautiful things, and we were talking about the creative process, the writing process, and specifically those thoughts that get into our head." So I'm finishing up my workbook. That's a compliment to the book, and I'm in that phase now of like right before it goes to editing. I'm like, is this anything? Are people gonna like this? Or is like, and you get all in your head about it. And then you were talking about how that you feel that way with chapter by chapter with your book.
Oh
So,
yeah. Yeah. I feel like it's a vicious cycle. I don't think I'm alone in this. I think you're right. Like that feeling is very real. And so I'll wake up in the morning, I'll start writing a chapter, I get 3 paragraphs in, and I'm thinking, okay, like this is great stuff. Like what freaking insight. I'm a genius. This is gonna be a New York Times bestseller. Then by the time I get to the end of the chapter, like an hour and a half later, I'm like, this is terrible. I don't know what I was thinking. What a waste of time. No one's ever gonna, even if they got this far in the book, they're gonna put it down because this is the worst material ever. And then the next morning, I'll wake up and I'll start by reading like what I wrote yesterday, and I'll go, "Oh my gosh, what amazing like, that is a great chapter, like, unbelievable. That moves with good insight. This is a New York Times bestseller." I'm so excited again, and then it's all happens over and over. I'm like, "Oh my god, great stuff. Oh, this is terrible. What crap." And I think that I we were just we were when we were chatting about it, you were saying, like, "I wish I wasn't necessary." I mean, I don't think anyone wishes they felt this roller coaster of a ride when you're trying to create anything. But I feel like it's kinda necessary, and I think it's a specific type of creator that feels this way. They have high expectations for their output, and I know creators who don't ever feel that. They just, like, charge through, and then I read their stuff or I watch their stuff, and I'm like, "Meh, it's okay." Like, I don't, you know what I mean? I'm like, "Yeah," but and I think it's the creators who have high expectations and go on this roller coaster that you see remarkable improvement consistently with the stuff they create. Everything gets better and better, and without the roller coaster, I don't know that it happens.
okay, two things with that. Because one, I agree. I know those creators that are super confident in their work. They it's they're super confident, and then when I read their work or look at it, I'm like, okay, it's good. It's not great. And so I'm like, how that level of confidence? But we should all be that confident in our work. Wherever you are, even if you haven't been able to get it exactly where you want it to be, you should still have the confidence that this is good work. It is good. And guess what? For someone else, it's amazing. For someone else, but as you consume more content and you read more books and you have more experience in consuming really good stuff, that's when I feel like your taste grows and grows. And that's when you push yourself to get better and better. So I think those people, they do get better. We have to live in that confidence space, knowing that we can always get better, knowing that you still have to have
Yeah.
that pain of, it reminds me of what's that saying, the Marcus Aurelius, how he would have someone stand behind him and kept saying, "You're just a man. You're
Oh,
just a
that's good,
man."
that's good.
Like to
Yeah.
remind him, your ego can't be so big that you think that, "Hey, I'm the most
Yeah, I'm
amazing one.
above
I don't need
everything.
to
Yeah.
prove." But also have that confidence of, "No, my work is good, and I'm gonna put it out into the world and be confident about it, knowing that the next thing I do is gonna be better."
Yeah, I love that. I feel like the creators that are the people who create stuff that are overconfident, it's like all they need is a dose of humility. There's a difference between being confident in the output and being humble about the output or your effort or who you are and how you show up. So like I know some very successful people, like when you think of success, especially when you're creating like a book, you'd think New York Times bestseller for 37 weeks or something, right? I would hope that that person is really confident in their work. Like the market has proven that that work is sustainable, it's worth consuming. A lot of people agree, it seems. And, it's got 70,000 5-star reviews. Like, okay, I would expect that person to be confident, but it's the people that have that kind of success and also have a tremendous amount of humility. They don't expect you to know who they are. Like, I'll give you an example. I just went to this conference. I spoke at Author Nation, which sounds like it would be great for me. Like, I love to write. It's all about books, but I had the biggest imposter syndrome there because I write nonfiction and this was a fiction conference. So like everybody there is writing like sci-fi romance. And it was like these amazing mashups, like woman's lit meets magical sorcery. I'm like, wow, I don't even know. I don't know how to comprehend that. But I also didn't know any of the players. Like if I go to a conference, I read so many nonfiction books that I will bump into people that I didn't even know they were there, but I've read their book or I've seen their YouTube stuff or whatever. This was like foreign to me. And so I met a person, had a great chat with, like at the first day at the cocktail hour, thinking, oh my gosh, I'm learning so much. What a nice person. Like he's published 12 books, like so accomplished. Um, and then like 15 minutes later, I turned around and somebody who was organizing the event was like, do you want to meet this person? I won't use their name, but I was like, "Oh, yeah, sure." And they were, like, pointing, and I'd actually forgotten the person's name by that point, and then I realized as they're walking me over that this is the person I just met, but they had just given a long list of accolades, like, they generated $20 million in revenue last year from their last 3 books, and they had the largest Kickstarter ever for a fiction series, and, like, that person has extreme confidence in their output, but a huge amount of humility. He didn't need to tell me who he was to make me feel uncomfortable and make him feel confident. And so I think as creators, it's hard to strike that balance. The people that tend to seem like they're so confident in their work also come across to me as not humble. I don't know. Am I
Mm.
going anywhere with this?
I thought, "Is this anything?" Like, that's what phrase I thought with, is this a thing? Is it that?"
Yeah.
Yeah, I get that because I think when I go to a conference and I go up to some of the people that I really appreciate their work, I love how kind they are. Like,
Yeah.
they're so sweet, they're so nice, they're like, "Oh my gosh, I'm so grateful you read the book."
Yeah.
And I mean, before we got on this call, we were talking about Anne Handley. I mean, Anne Handley is like the sweetest woman.
Oh, look, amazing.
One of the best writers ever. Her newsletter is incredible. Her books are amazing. She's a great speaker. And I remember the first time I met her, she was the nicest, sweetest person. And you look at celebrities that
Yeah.
are overly sweet and I don't know if this is true because I've never gone and seen them, but Penn and Teller, have you heard of
Yeah.
Penn?
Yeah, of
So
course.
yeah, right, like, they're famous, they've been doing magic for, like, 40 plus years, and they've been in Vegas forever
Oh, yeah.
doing this show. I've heard, and again, I don't know if this is true, so maybe someone can tell us, but I heard that they actually stay after each show, and they will stay as long as it takes to see everybody that waits to meet them.
Yeah,
They're so grateful.
that's awesome.
I mean, look at Taylor Swift.
Yeah,
The amount of the she has such a following of fans because she knows and she thinks like, "Look, I'm not who I am if I don't have
yeah,
these people." And so
yeah,
I feel like that's what we love about the humility. You do incredible work and you know that it's amazing and you're confident in that, but also you stay humble.
yeah. I think that makes a big difference. I was thinking about this recently. There's like 3 types of kind of accolades you try to expect whenever you create something, right? And I think they they affect the kind of output you create. So when I'm writing a book, like I'm working on the loyalty loop book right now, and every time I'm writing it, I'm like, I want this to be a New York Times bestseller. Like this is for everybody. Everybody should read this. Doesn't matter, like it's about loyalty in your relationships just as much as it's about loyalty for your software business. Like I don't know why anybody wouldn't read this. This is going to be, I can see this on the New York Times bestseller. It's going to sell 100,000 copies. It's going to, for 12 years, I can see it be a bestseller. This is going to be great. And I think that's productive. Like it's helping you aspire to something, and the market kind of dictates what you consider success might be when you're in the creation process. But as soon as you like right now, you're at the point at which you're handing this journal in, right? Those market expectations you set for yourself while you're creating it, I think are good because it helps you strive and aspire to do great work. But the minute you send it to the editor, I think we have to try to start adjusting our expectations because now what defines success is so rare for most people to achieve. Like most of us will never have a New York Times bestseller for 36 weeks, like Chris Voss's negotiation book or Brene Brown's Fear, right? Like it's just not, I get it. It's unlikely. And no matter how hard we try, it's unlikely that'll happen. And I'm okay with that. I wasn't in the past. But if you maintain that expectation through the release, all of a sudden you lose a ton of confidence in the product you created because it didn't measure up to what you thought it would be. And so now you're a little bit bash about sharing it with other people or telling other people about it because you came out with this big splash and you made it to Amazon #1 for 7 hours and like and then it fell, right? And like you're like, oh, it's not what I expected. And you go drink a glass of wine and you're kind of depressed for a week. That's what happens to me anyway. But I think what I've tried to adjust is, you know what? I've realized now that I've written enough stuff, it's the one-on-one emails and letters and conversations that I have about people from people who have actually consumed the product that have transformed the way they see their business or their life. Um, that has that really provide the validation and the success in the book itself. So, like, that's the second tier. It's like the individuals who actually have used it, right? Like, I have so many friends who supported me in buying my books in the first 24 hours to help me get on the bestseller list. But then I say, like, hey, even to like my best personal friends, I'm talking my best personal friends. Hey, I know you bought the book. What'd you think? They're always like, "Oh, yeah, the book, it's I did it's I think it's gonna be great. It's sitting on my nightstand. I just have it's, there's, busy, kids, great," and I'm like, "Okay, they're never gonna read it." But it's the people I've never met that I just got an email from recent yeah, like 2 days ago from a nonprofit who, like, 12 years ago read Brandscaping, and every year during the holidays, he writes me this really long email about how that book has changed his business, his nonprofit, and the lives that they affect, and how it continues to. I just got goosebumps, by the way, for those of you listening. I, like, can feel like, that's how I know the book made an impact. Not it never made it to the New York Times bestseller list, and it was barely on the Amazon bestseller list, but it's the individuals that keep reminding me of the impact that make it powerful, and that's the second kind. Let me get to the third kind really quick, but the third one is, like, your own personal success of the book, right? Like, I'm not proud of Brandscaping in a lot of ways. It's got too many ideas in it. It's packed with anecdotes and stories that I just fell in love with. I know most people don't grasp all the concepts because I tried to cover too much. I just like vomited everything in that book. And so I'm not that confident in sharing the book with others when people are like, I want to buy 250 copies of Brandscaping for our association. I'm like, oh my gosh, I hope they like it. Um, and you have to keep constantly reminding yourself that while it's not the book or the thing I would have created today, that but you should remind yourself of who you've become as a result of the product you created in the past. And those 3 things have helped me, like, tremendously in the process, but also set better expectations and constantly improve my product while remaining humble, I think.
Okay. I love all of that because whether you're writing a book or you're creating anything, you're a different human after you've done something, after you've experienced something. And when I was writing my book, I all the authors I talked to, I don't know one of them that didn't say, "Oh yeah, by the way, when you write your next book, because you're probably gonna write another one, when you do, you're gonna look back at your first and be like, "That book sucks," or you're gonna wish you could change it, and I'm like, "No, that's not gonna be," it's like, I don't wanna feel that way, and honestly, that's exactly what happened. I was like, "Why did I structure it that way? Why
That's so
why
true.
didn't I include this? I should have made this part longer, I should," and so I did the same thing, and then I just look at it like, "What next?" Like, what else can I create? What else can I create that continues to, even if it's like a similar idea, like, I look at some of the authors that I really appreciate, and their books are amazing, but they say similar things in some of their books.
Yeah.
Like, they have yes, they have different stories, and they might frame it a little bit differently, but it can be more powerful, but it's not like they're changing topics
Yeah,
completely or
totally.
something. And I also think it's interesting. I love that you define success like the last way, just looking at it from your like, how do you define success? Because I think that's challenging for people who wanna start anything, whether it's writing a book or a
Mm.
podcast or a blog or anything. It's almost like and maybe this is a good question for you, Andrew, like how you look at this. When you start something and you start it because you love it, I
Yeah,
hope, like, for people that are starting something, I had this idea and I really wanted to if you're not doing that, then maybe rethink why you're doing it. But, like, but some people, they say they really they wanna have a podcast, they wanna start a YouTube channel, they wanna do something, but we have this expectation, and I think the expectation comes from a lot of people we hear online, like, "Oh, you just put up a YouTube channel, and in 3 weeks, you do this
yeah,
and that, and you're gonna get 100,000 subscribers, and you can monetize it, and it's so easy, and then you just get to hang out."
yeah.
And we hear so much of that I think some people have this expectation that, "Oh, I'm just gonna start this thing, and it's just gonna blow up." So how do you continue to move forward on a project, keep the humility, but keep the I have to, keep the humility, but also push yourself to get better every day. And when it's not necessarily going as fast as you want it to
Oh
go,
my
like
lord.
how do you keep the motivation to keep going? Or when do you say it's time to give up and try something new because this just isn't a good idea?
Okay, first, you should know I'm not a patient person. Like, if there's, if like, if I was in an interview and they're like, "Hey, what's your biggest flaw?" The first one I say is like, "I'm impatient and this interview is already too long. Like, let's just get cut to the chase." Uh, that's how impatient I am. Um, so I find it really painful when success doesn't happen fast or the end result isn't here when I expect it to be here. So it's a real challenge for me. And what I've tried to do, I guess, is two things. The first is I've tried to realize that any content creation or creation in and of itself is a step in the journey where I'm learning something new. And even though I don't know where it's going to take me, the output will be valuable at some point. So I'll give you an example. This has happened multiple times. Maybe the easiest example is during the pandemic, I was trying to figure out why some businesses were being successful during the pandemic with all the same constraints, but in like a similar industry, there was like a business that had just collapsed and was out of business. And I was like, but they're facing the exact same constraints. They're in the exact same industry. How has this happened? And so I started creating a series of YouTube videos trying to investigate this. I had no idea where it would go, right? But I was just like, why can two closet organizers during the pandemic have totally different strategies on how to run their business, and one goes bankrupt and the other one expands? Like, I don't understand why that works that way. What are they doing? Um, and I came up with this thing. It was like a triangle, and I was starting to realize that there's maybe like some consistent things that all these people did, and I had no idea where it was going. But then I started to realize that, wait a second, like, this is something bigger, and it speaks to something that's not about the pandemic. And all of a sudden I was like, you know what? I think there's something in this for every business that people could learn. And next thing you know, I was writing like a brand new speech called The Cube of Creativity, and the three things turned into four things. And I was going back to those original videos that I created, and I was thinking, "Oh my gosh, these are great case studies that I could insert even though I found new ones, and yeah, it's not a triangle anymore." So, like, if I go back and watch those original videos, you can see how excited I am. I was drawing it on a cardboard box, like, how excited I am about this triangle of transformation, I think is what I called it. And I was like, I was you could tell, I was like, "This is like a whole new paradigm." And, like, it didn't take very long with some deep thought over the course of a lot of gathering new stories to realize that it's not a triangle. There's a fourth thing, and the fourth thing might be the most important thing. Um, but without doing that work, no, the fact that those videos only got 700 views doesn't make any difference to me. If I had never done that work, I would never have the Cube of Creativity as a great speech that is booked all the time, and I wouldn't have like, I think I've slotted for maybe next year, that I think it's 2027, to write that book. Like, I'm still gathering stories and creating content around it, not just for the views or the likes or the audience, but because I know if I stop doing the research, the book will never happen. So that's the first thing. That was a long-winded way. Was that helpful?
Yes.
Okay. So it's never about the views and stuff. I think the second thing that I realized is if I put my measure and metric of success in just the like, the influencer kind of bucket, like, "Hey, you can get paid." I have done sponsored YouTube videos, right? Like, I've had brands that have said, like, "We wanna underwrite some content." I've done brand ambassador deals, where it's, 12 months of creating content and doing a bunch of speeches for brands. Like, that stuff is lucrative, but I don't enjoy it. I don't get much out of, taking like, creating content on behalf of a brand that I'm not that committed to or that excited about, even though they're paying me handsomely for it. And so, I think the second piece of the puzzle is you have to, like, enjoy the investigation, the journey, the quest as much as you enjoy the potential for success at the end of the road. And I my YouTube channel isn't that successful. And I did stop doing weekly videos, like, I have stopped doing them, um, and, like, only because I stopped enjoying the process of creating the videos, um, themselves. Does that make sense? Like, it just became, like, a drag, and it wasn't a fun part of the journey anymore. So now I'm finding other ways to share those stories, like, I just write them and share them on email, or I've had a lot of success sharing those stories on LinkedIn, which I really enjoy. Um, and I don't enjoy it because they get 2,300 impressions or whatever. I enjoy it because the process of getting the post out there is new research and new ideas that I can share, and the reaction to those things is granular, not, you know, a mountain of output. So, I don't know. Those are my 2 thoughts.
So what I like about it is, well, 2 things. One, it's almost, well, what I wrote down first is it's always worth it. I used to have a little
Yeah,
sticky note
that's
on my
good.
computer, and I would always look at it when I felt like a little frustrated. I'm like, it's always worth it. Like, what I'm creating is worth it. As long as you feel excited about it, like, just it's worth it.
Yeah.
You're gonna get something out of it. And then it's almost like what people talk about. You're basically putting things out that are you're testing it. It's like a testing ground. You put things out on
Yeah.
YouTube and then, okay, maybe YouTube's not the platform. Now you're going to put it on LinkedIn, or maybe you use Threads, or like whatever you decide to do. And it really is just like a testing ground to see, which is obviously very helpful before you go and write a book or create an online course or do
Yeah.
all this, put all this hard work into doing something long form. We have a lot of opportunity to test our ideas out and see what works and what doesn't. And that's the same thing with when I think about writing, is getting it out of your head and onto the page, and it kind of looks like, oh, maybe this wasn't as good of an idea as I thought it was in my head. But then sometimes you write it and it's crappy, but then you go back to the next day and you're like, there's something
There's something
here.
here. Yeah, right.
And like you did it, but you never would have gotten there had you, like, sometimes I'll write a poem and I'll write something, and like a short story or something, and then I'll look back and I'm like, I don't love any of this until I got to the end. The ending is actually the beginning of where I want to start, and it's something else, but I would never would have started there.
Yeah.
And so I just love that whole process. But I love that you talk about how you give yourself permission to when you no longer enjoy the process. And I think that's where there's 2 ways of looking at it. One, if you're building a business, or you want to be a quote unquote influencer online,
Yeah.
if you want your career to be a YouTuber, well then yes, this is different
Yeah.
advice. The advice to be a YouTuber is go follow someone who knows how to
Yeah,
do
exactly.
that.
Yeah.
And yes, you're gonna have to do that and grind it out. But when I talk to people that do earn an income doing YouTube, it is a lot. It is a lot of work. It is a lot of you have to create videos that you might not necessarily even want to be creating, but like because the algorithm, or because the keyword phrases or the
Yeah.
topic, all of those things. And so I think it's just like very different to look at. So the expectation, I think people we need to have a good expectation on, well, why are you doing this? What is the goal? Like, is the goal to really just have fun with it? And if that's the goal and just to see what happens with it, like if you start a podcast, that's great. But if it's a business thing, then it's different. And I think that people get those two mixed up when
Yeah.
getting advice from people.
Maybe. Yeah, it's I think though, if you're open to exploring lots of ideas, I think we're talking about idea people mostly. Like,
Yeah.
um, I'll give you an example. I was really intrigued. I went to this Charlotte airport. Well, I go to the Charlotte airport all the time, but I noticed that there's a shoeshine shop in the Charlotte airport that's pay what you want. Have you ever noticed this?
Oh, yes. Yep.
Yeah, and I was like, "What? Like, how can you run a shoeshine thing in an airport that's pay what you want? Like, what if everybody just gets their shoes shined and, like, pays $1? Like, you won't even be able to make your rent for the space in the airport, right?" So this is the question I had, and I was like, "Alright, I'm gonna figure it out." So I did a story on the woman who owns that. By the way, it is a woman. She started this shoe shine business. She's now in, like, 7 airports, and it's all pay what you want. She also owns a bunch of other businesses. She's, like, quite the awesome female entrepreneur in my mind. Like, she's just a great entrepreneur. You can take the female out. She's really smart. Like, it doesn't matter that she's a female. It's just awesome. And I was like, "Okay, I gotta find out how she does this. Like, why does this work?" And I did a YouTube video about it, but I dove, like, all into this research about, like, why pay what you want works and how nonprofits have attempted it and why it's worked and why it hasn't. And it got to the point where I was so excited about pay what you want that I was like, I'm gonna do pay what you want." So I have a thing, it's not very heavily advertised, but I tried it for 30 days. I decided I would do, hour-long calls. They were called, honest hours, uh, where I was gonna do no preparation, and it was pay what you want. Like, if you wanna have a call with me, the call is free. Like, if you don't get anything out of the hour, I don't care. Like, don't pay me anything. Um, and before this, I had set, like, what I thought my rate would be. Like, okay, if I was gonna charge you for an hour with me, I was like, I don't know, let's make it $150. Like, that sounds good, right? And some people might think that's really expensive. Some people might be like, that's not too bad. And some people are gonna be like, that's so cheap, I'll do it. Uh, so it turns out I undervalued, and this is what all the research predicted. I undervalued my time by like a factor of like 5. Some people, one guy paid me, I think it was $1,800 for the hour. And
Wow.
some people paid $50. Like, and it was never a factor of the value. It was a factor of what they could afford relative to them. I made so much more money than I ever expected doing honest hours. And so I know you're saying like this is about ideas, but if you want to run a business, it's kind of different. Like you might have to take different advice. I don't know if that's true. I think if you're open to experimenting and seeing these ideas through, you'll find that maybe there are new ways to expand your business that aren't from a guru on YouTube or in a book that some expert has written, but you have to be willing to go on the journey yourself. And so, like, I'm a giant proponent of pay what you want now. I don't know where else to use it, and I don't have a ton of stories, but, like, maybe my 7th book will be about how, like, prices are meaningless and we should invite people to pay what they want. You know what I mean?
Yeah. That's so how do you still do them?
I still do them. It's still on my website. You can go to akadrewdavis.com. I think it's Honest Hour. I'll send you the link if anybody's listening and
That
you wanna try it. It's still pay you what you want.
that's so cool. Oh, and by the way, I don't think if any I think any business owner it should be trying something new. I don't
Yeah,
think we need to go and, like, just have, like I think there's, like, something to be said about the basics of something, like, if the basics of setting things up and getting that down, but yeah, when it comes to actually having breakthroughs, I think if anyone is a business owner or entrepreneur, they're an idea person.
yeah.
Like, it's part of what they got them into business. And so I think there's always room to try stuff. I mean, I had a call the other day with someone and we were talking about this because I was like, every year when I think about the business, I think about how much we want to grow and what we want to do. Like we'll implement something new and like 2 years ago, I hired a marketing firm, which I hadn't done before, and I was like, "We're gonna really go all in on webinars because webinars is the thing." And I was, like, convinced this is the thing, and I know it. It's gonna be the thing that changes the entire business. Was it good for us? Yes. Was it the game changer I thought it would be? No. But to the point of the process, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
are amazing at webinars now. Like we can get one up next week and it's really
Exactly.
great. And so we learned around I learned a ton about copywriting and like I learned so much that I can now use in other areas of the business
Yeah.
that are very that's very valuable. And so so I think it's interesting how whether you're whether it's a creative project or a business, because obviously it's the same thing, right? Like you have to try new things. You have to find new ways to reach other people. I think creatives, what I find interesting is, and going back to your point on kind of taste and how we have this idea of what we want something to look like when we're creating it. It's like I often wonder, is the work good? And is the work good and is it challenging to market or is it just not great work?
Mhm.
Because that I would argue there's probably some incredible writers and poets and YouTubers that they just haven't figured out how to get it out into the hands of the right people and they haven't grown. But then there's some people that they understand how to package their projects in a way that they're able to see the eyeballs. And that's not to say their quality can't be great. You have to have a good product that you then know how to market. But so that's where I kind of wonder a lot about creatives. Like, how do you decide? Like, is my message off? Is it not good? Or am I just really not great at marketing it and getting more people to see it? Right? Like,
So, okay, this is everybody battles with this. I definitely battle with this. I'm always like, is the idea to okay, here, I can give you another example. I I spent all this time trying to figure out how to get people to pay attention to the content you're creating, right? I spent like a year on this, and it ended up in a great speech called The Curiosity Factor, and it's basically using a bunch of rules we already know from watching reality TV that you can leverage in any kind of content to earn people's attention. And so I created tons of YouTube videos as I was building this idea, explaining what I was learning and showing people case studies and giving them examples, right? Um, and those videos probably average 500, 700, maybe 1,000, 2,000 views. Then I repackaged some of those ideas into a total YouTube friendly format, which is like 5 key things you gotta do if you're gonna create a testimonial video. And, like, I wrote a little script and then I shot it. That video, I don't know what it has now, but it's probably in the range of, like, 100,000 views, and, like, every day there's more views on just that one video, right? It's the same ideas repackaged in, like, the YouTube friendly algorithm loving format. Um, People comment on it every day. I get, like, alerts, "Hey, another person commented on the video." So, this is just my so I'm giving you this example, to say that you're right. Packaging for the platform can make all the difference if you're trying to get the views, right? But the process of getting to the ideas that get the views isn't always algorithm and influencer and platform friendly. And that doesn't mean it's worthless. In fact, it may mean it's worth more because if you go through that process to get to the great idea that you can then repackage in one video instead of all millions of experimentations in the same content or regurgitating other people's crap, like you're actually sharing something new that is valuable in a way that the platform really likes. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I've chosen not to do that, but I don't know, not consciously necessarily, but it's like a lot of times I feel like, okay, I've already covered all this. Like repackaging this into a 5-minute video that's friendly for YouTube doesn't really serve me. Like I don't want to waste my time. But the for others, I can see that being valuable. Do you know what I mean, Kate?
when you say for others, it would be valuable.
It might be valuable for others to go on the journey of exploring a new idea, using the content you're creating, and being okay with the fact that you don't get a lot of views, but then using the best practices or the guide on how to create content for that platform to take the ideas that you've found and gathered and put them in a friendly format. What I'm trying to say is there's lots of tools out there right now, especially AI powered ones, where it's like you can take Andrew's old videos that are a rambling mess of awesome case studies and repackage them using AI into like a TikTok friendly format. It'll use exactly what you're supposed to do for TikTok. It'll give you a great script. You can go read my story, and I guarantee it'll get more views than if I do the video the way I would like to do the video because it uses the platform's format. So what I'm saying is, I think thinkers, idea people do the work that leads to something that's easy to reformat. And
Yeah.
people that just want the views take other people's idea and just put them in the format for the platform. And
Uh,
and so if you want both, if you want to be able to do deep work, sell books, be a visionary. You can't just repackage ideas in a way that the platform likes. You have to be able to also come up with the ideas. I'll tell Simon Sinek is actually a genius of this. If I look at his TikTok channel, it's full of like great TikTok sound bites. And he's like really good. His team is unbelievable at repackaging his ideas and even others' ideas that he's espousing in a way that's really easy to consume. But Sinek is also the kind of deep thinker that has done a bunch of thinking and work around this, not on TikTok. And that's what's generated the great sound bites. Does that make sense?
yes. Yes. That makes a ton of sense because that's where I feel like the deep work that you do, that's the stuff that takes time, and lots of people are impatient, especially when it comes to putting things out into the world because some people are like, "No, no, no, the algorithm says I have to put something out every day, or I have to do something every day, or people are gonna forget about me," or we've just kind of become this culture of like, we have to be out all the time. But
Yeah.
then you look at someone like Cal Newport who writes about technology and social media, and yet he's not even on social media.
Yeah, right.
And so interesting. But it's because he's sitting down and really doing the work of writing his books and thinking through everything.
Yeah.
But because we've kind of become this society of just very we're addicted to the phones, we're addicted to getting information, it's like it's so fast paced that it can be really it can almost feel stressful
Yeah.
to be just thinking or to just be writing and let it be okay that you're getting stuff out and knowing that this isn't the thing, but that you're gonna get there, but it's gonna take some time. I mean, writing a book is challenging in that way because
Yeah.
you have all these ideas that you're thinking through and you're writing about, and you're not really sharing. I mean, you can share pieces of it to get feedback, but it's still kind of it's a lot. It's
Yeah.
a lot of thinking, a lot of collecting resources, a lot of does this work? How do I package it in the right way? Am I saying it the right way? Could I use a visual to make it easier for the reader and just like be thinking about the reader? And so I don't know. That's an interesting. Anyway, now I'm just rambling. But
Well,
like when I think about creating, I think about all of these things because I also want to, when I think about sometimes I just want to get something out, but also I really appreciate having to think through stuff and figure
yeah.
out and also because I appreciate those people that have done the work. It's almost like it's like a comedian, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Comedians get up on stage and it's fine if you're just at random ABC club in LA, you can say some things that are not gonna hit because it
Yeah.
doesn't really matter, but not when you have your Netflix special.
Yeah, exactly. No, I think the comedian analogy is exactly right. In fact, I there's a chapter in the referable speaker where I recount a story. I used to do open mic nights, um,
Oh my god,
and
you're
stand-up
right for
comedy.
the
Oh, I loved it. It was so much fun, and my wife will be the first to tell you that I'm not a good stand-up comedian, which I appreciate, right? But I used to go to it was at a place called Sally O'Brien's, which is just like you're talking ABC Club, right? It was Monday no, it's Tuesday nights at Sally O'Brien's in Somerville, Massachusetts, and I used to go every week, and I would, like, bring my new material, and I'd bomb on stage. Like, I'd have 5 minutes, and it was a long 5 minutes for everybody, me and the audience. Anyway, what was amazing about it was, eventually there was a guy in the open mic night that came every week, and I was like, "Oh my god," I kinda became friendly with him. He's a really nice guy, always had really good comedy. He was always in the back taking notes and, like, waiting for his 5 minutes, and then the person who ran the open mic night was moving to LA because they wanted to be a real comedian, and so on their last night, they said, "Hey, does anyone wanna take over organizing and emceeing this?" And, like, if you've ever been to an open mic night, the MC's job is the worst. Like, you gotta be there from 7 p.m. to, like, 1 a.m. You're introducing annoying speakers to an audience of people who just have to buy 2 free drinks, they don't have to pay for a show. It's like it's a thankless job. Meanwhile, this guy that I've been hanging out with raises his hand immediately, and I'm like, "Dude, what are you nuts? Like, why would you wanna do this?" And they were like, "Are you sure you wanna do it, Josh?" And he's like, "Yeah, I'll do it." They're like, "Okay, like, next Tuesday, it's all yours." Well, I asked Josh, I'm like, "Josh, why would you do this?" He's like, "Look, here's the deal, like, I wanna get better, and 5 minutes every Tuesday at Sally O'Brien's isn't enough. Like, I need to iterate faster, and why I wanna do this is because between every comedian, I can just keep refining jokes and I'll get 45 minutes on stage over the course of 7 p.m. to 11 till 1 a.m. while you're only getting 5 minutes. And I was like, holy smokes, are you serious? He's like, yeah. So every week I would watch him get up and he would sometimes rewrite the same joke and just keep delivering it every time he introduced a new person, hoping for a better laugh from the three people who were drunk at the bar. That's all he was trying to do. Josh Gondelman ended up being the within a year, by the way, a finalist on Last Comic Standing. He wrote a best-selling comedy book, like best-selling meaning it was on the New York Times bestseller list for a few weeks. He ran the Twitter handle for a long time called Seinfeld Today or something, where he wrote Seinfeld jokes as if they were happening in real time. It was hilarious. He's wrote a dating advice book that's so funny, and now he used to be a school teacher, now he's a full-time stand-up comedian making really good money. I don't know if he has a Netflix
What's his
schedule
name?
yet. Josh Gondelman.
I forgot
He's
chapter.
hilarious.
Oh.
Anybody that appreciates stand-up comedy will appreciate his comedy. But here, the point of the story is that you're absolutely right. Like, the more you realize that sharing your ideas, even if it's 3 drunk guys at the back of a bar, can help you make that content better, the better your content, no matter what it is gonna be. And Josh understood that certainly better than I did, and maybe he was braver than I, but it's paid off, and I think it can pay off for all of us.
Ugh, yes, and he wasn't afraid of bombing. He wasn't afraid of the silence. He wasn't afraid that it wasn't good, and I feel like that holds a lot of people back, and
Yeah.
what's so crazy about that is no one cares about you. Like,
No,
nobody cares. If you put things out every single day on LinkedIn and no it gets no views, no nothing,
exactly.
people hate it, guess what? It's not gonna impact your life. It's
So
fine.
true.
And if you really believe in the idea, like I have this idea that I've really been thinking about, and I don't know if I feel like it's a book, but I don't know like the way in which I would write it yet. But just the concept of the value of the value of work.
Mm,
I think so many people are like, I don't want to work.
mhm.
I don't believe that. I think that we do wanna work. Like, yes, of course, we wanna hang out and relax and have be and have all the time in the world we want to, like, do what we want. But also, there's a lot of value in work. We find purpose and
Yeah,
meaning and all the things we're talking about now, right? Like problem solving and curiosity and so I think that so many people kind of disregard and we maybe try to go after a life that's quote unquote easy.
yeah,
It would be so boring. And so I've just been really thinking about this idea of work and maybe this is just because I my algorithm is filled with like some people, I do a lot of work around company culture and people. So there's a lot of the great resignation and people
yeah,
don't want to work anymore. And I just don't believe that that's true because I meet so many people that are doing work and I'm not saying they all have the most meaningful jobs, but they really care about their work. Like they care
yeah,
about the people they get to serve and they feel like they're part of a bigger mission. And so I think there's something around this idea of the value of work and how it really is helpful in our lives and how we can find a little bit more joy in the process of work.
yeah.
I don't
Which
know what that will be, but I feel like there's something there and I
Okay, I
want to
think this is a good idea, by the way. I should say that right off the bat. This is a great idea. Uh, and I have a suggestion for your first exploration, or maybe it's not your first, but your next exploration on this idea.
Okay.
I think instead of talking to people who enjoy their work, because those are easy to find, I think you should talk to people who retired young and lost their purpose and can't figure out what to do with their life. And in fact, I know someone exactly like this. I have a friend who retired at 32 with a huge payout and basically could not figure out what to do with his life, and has found it really frustrating. Um, and I think it proves your point that, and like, not to give away the end of the story, but I think you'll find that they find something that is work. Maybe not in the traditional sense, like they don't have a 9 to 5 job, but, like this person got so into ham radio that it's not a hobby. It's like he treats it like his job. You know what I mean?
Yes,
It's work.
yes.
And he's like uncovered things that he never would have, and like, it's pretty amazing. So, it's not what we would consider traditional work, but he's replaced what used to provide him with all the things you just talked about with something that, to me, if you just look at it on the surface, spending 8 hours a day working on your ham radio, I mean, that sounds like a job to me.
Ye
Uh,
yes, that
right?
sounds like a job to me.
But okay, but this has been fun. I really enjoyed chatting about this, by the way.
Yes, Andrew, thank you so much for taking the time. I so
Right.
appreciate it. It's always fun. I feel like we always uncover something.
We
So,
do. It's really insightful for me too, so thanks for sharing your time with me.
well, I hope that people that are listening are like, "Okay, yeah, we got something out. You guys, you'll have to tell
Me
us what you
too.
got out of it." Or if you're
Exactly.
like, "What are these 2 talking about?"
You know what? Even if they don't, I don't care, because the process of chatting has led to a bunch of revelations that I've had, which are helpful for me.
Amazing, and that's why we do what we do.
Exactly.
All right, well, until
Thanks,
next
dude.
time, Andrew.
You got it.